Welcome everyone to April 2026 Focus Friday. Today you have Renee Titra, who's going to talk about designer things and WebFOCUS client, and myself. Want to say hi, Renee?
Hi everyone, glad you could join. Look forward to sharing some information with you. Thanks.
As I mentioned on the screen, you should be seeing the housekeeping. Just remember the session is being recorded. All right, so without further ado, let me get started here. Let's see if I can figure out, get back here. Oh, so the IBI Summit 2026 in New York City, the registrations are now open. Please register. And the agenda is live. So if you go to, and since I'm already out in my browser, let's go to www.ibi.com events. And you scroll down to in-person events, and then IBI Summit 2026. And at the very top, the agenda is now live. Check it out here. And it's 2 days packed full of information. I'm signed up for 3 sessions, 1 mainframe. So if you are running any of the products on the mainframe, please try to attend my session. And then I'm doing one on features that you may have known about but have forgotten about. So it's more my favorite features that I use most of the time in order to make your queries a little more efficient. And then a topic that's generally popular is joins. So I'm doing the many cases of joins. But we got many other sessions which you hopefully will be interested in. And hopefully we'll see you there. All right. All right, so let's just start. Make sure there's no questions yet. Okay. So I'm going to start out talking about your synonyms, your master files. And I've broken this out into 3 separate sessions. So today we're going to talk about the file section of the synonym of the master file. In further segments, we're going to talk about the segment area and then the field area. Excuse me. So in a synonym, you have the synonym name identifies the master name, the access file if you have one. If you're doing relational data set reporting, your relational table will have an access file showing the connection that you're using to get to your data. The synonym, let's see, if you create a hold file, many of your hold file formats will create a synonym. Some of them don't, like Excel and XLSX and PPT. Any ones that's styled output might not have its own synonym, but it has information about the file, the segments, excuse me, any fields that are in the file. You can also put defines, computes, and filters, sort objects, style objects, and all this we'll talk about later when we get down to the field level. So at the file level, we're going to have any variable declarations and then file-specific information. So if you notice, the segment and the field are kind of subsections underneath a particular file. If you have DBA, you're going to end your synonym with the word end and then have your DBA information. So a simple synonym, so this is using a fixed file. Everything's in a fixed format in the data set. So we have file equals file name, in this case suffix equals fix. We only have one segment, so it's going to be seg name main. Seg type equals S3. I'm not sure if I go into it in detail, but the S means that it's sorted, and 3 is sorted based on the first 3 characters or the first 3 fields in the file. So we have field country, which is in purple, field car, which is in blue, field model in red, and dealer cost in green. And it shows how your actual data file gets mapped using the synonym. The mapping happens based on the actual, which is that second value. So country is A10, A10. So the first A10 is the usage. How is WebFOCUS going to use the field? And then we have the actual of how it is stored in the file itself. All right, so basically I'm showing a list of all the file attributes, and I'm going to talk about them. If there's any file attribute that you have a specific question on, feel free to ask. So we started out, we got file name and suffix. Those are required. The ones in blue you may or may not have. So access, if your suffix has SQL in the name, SQL MSS, SQL MySQL. If it's DB2, which doesn't start with SQL, but it's an SQL engine, WebFOCUS knows that those are going to have access files and will automatically look for them. Focus data sets can have an access file or not. So if you do things like an MDI, a multi-dimension index, then you have to tell WebFOCUS where to find the access file that defines what the multi-dimensional index is. If you're doing smart partitioning. So any of these more advanced type of things will require an access file. If you have a common delimiter file, a defix file, that will also have an access file which will identify your delimiter and your enclosures, and if you have column titles. Remarks provides a descriptive text. You can do a description of this file, and notice it's description _ LN. LN for language, so you could have a DESC _ EN. You can have a DEC _ I'm going to say it's ES for Spanish. But it allows you then to have descriptions in multiple languages. So the front-end tools, when you do hovering, then can pop up those descriptions in the proper language in your application. FDescent is the file default century, and this is for windowing. So if you have dates that still have 2-digit years, and you have a year of 20, is it 1920 or is it 2020? So you can set your default century of 19, and then you have your F year thresh. So you set year thresh, and if the value is less than year thresh, then we're going to increase the century. So if I set year thresh to 50 and it's 20, then I want that to be 2020 as opposed to 1920. MFD profile, I'll go into a little more examples at the end of this, but it's basically a procedure that you're going to run just before you access the data in the file. So anytime you have a procedure that references this synonym and it has an MFD profile, that MFD profile is going to run first. And usually we do it if you want to kind of variabilize, is that a word? Any file defs or dynamics. Code page, when you start your server, your server starts with a particular code page. But you might have data from other sources that were created on other code pages, and you want to make sure you read them correctly. So at the file level, you can then specify what the code page is. Byte order is another one that's based on your operating system. So if you're running on, I never remember which one is Windows Big Endian or Little Endian, that's ENDIAN. But there's some operating systems, I want to say Solaris is one that uses a different endianness than other ones. So what you do is if you have a file that has binary data in it, integer data, and you take it and you bring it over to, say, your Windows environment, you can then tell WebFOCUS that, well, this file was created on an environment that had a byte order of Little Endian or Big Endian. And then that way, if it's different than the one you're running, it will know how to read those binary values correctly. And just a little more technical information. Big Indian, Little Indian. If you have a binary number, there's a sign bit. And if it's Big Indian, I want to say the sign bit goes to the most significant digit. And then in the Little Indian, it goes to the least significant digit. All right, I mentioned these are required. So we got file name, suffix. There's an IO type that shouldn't be on this particular slide because it is not required. IO type is basically when you create a hold file, if you do hold format alpha, and then you browse the file, you can see each record that you process on its own line. But if I do hold format binary, I'm going to see the data, and if I have any numeric data, I might not be able to read it. But you will see one big long record. So instead of having each record on its own line, we just append the data to the end of the first line. So it's just one big long line. And that's the difference between IO type stream and IO type binary. Again, normally you don't have to specify that, but you will see it if you do an on-table hold. All right, so these are definitely not required, and we've mentioned all of these already. Any questions on any of these? Looks like it's going to be another quiet group. Okay, access file, I've already mentioned that. Code page, byte order. All right, so here we go. BE is the default. IBM Z series and power. It's the most significant byte, and LE is the least significant byte first. Okay, year, thresh, and def sense, and MFD profile. So I know last year or the year before I did a whole session on profiles, and we talked about, we have the SPROF, we have FOCLOG. Depending on your environment, you have one or more. Again, the MFD profile is executed anytime your procedure references that synonym. So whether it's table, match, graph, define, if you do a check file, it's not executed if you do modify, maintain, or dash read file or rebuild. So those are the only cases that we don't allocate the MFD profile. Okay, it can be encrypted if it contains sensitive information, just like your synonym or your FOCUS can be. All right. The main thing you have to watch out for when you're running an MFD profile is if you reference the file that has the MFD profile in the MFD profile, you can create yourself a loop. So you have to be careful that when you run it, you only run it once, and you can do that using a counter. So you set a global counter equals global counter plus 1, and then you check and make sure only run the MFD profile code if the value is 1, otherwise skip around it. Also executed when controls retrieve values. Okay, so there's a note in the chat that says also executed when controls retrieve values. Yeah, so if you're in Designer and you have a control and that control uses a master somewhere behind the scenes, it's going to access that data, and as Doug's pointing out, it will also activate the MFD profile. Good point. So here's just a simple MFD profile, because as I said, I've talked about MFD profiles previously. So it's an attribute on the file entry in the synonym MFD underscore profile. In this case, is car mod P. And then card mark P says set file name equals. If folk user equals Walter, then file1.data, else file2.data. And then we issue a dynam alloc, and then we do a dash run to run the dynam alloc. If you're running in Windows or non-mainframe, this would be a file def. So anytime you access carmod, then this procedure will run, and if I'm running it, I'll get file 1, and if anybody else is running it, they'll get file 2. All right, any other questions? Next time we'll talk about segments, and next time for me is going to be April, May. It would be June, because I believe Steve is coming back next month to talk about some reporting server stuff. All right, and again, Summit is live. The agenda is out there. Registrations are out there. Register. Hope to see you there. All right, any other questions? Okay, I will stop sharing, and Renee, you can take it away.
Okay, just give me one moment. Okay, and thank you everyone for joining. Really appreciate it. Let me share my screen first. That probably help. And right now you should be seeing the WebFOCUS Hub. I'm running the latest and greatest release 937. I'm excited to show you the content today. And today's presentation, I've done a similar presentation in the past, but I'm kind of updated a little bit just to showcase designer visualizations from a report perspective, creating a report, and leveraging the features that are available within the designer UI. With 937, there's been additional features, some of them really, I think, great, closing the gap with App Studio, and I wanted to showcase as much as I could possibly today for you. So the very first thing, I'm in 937, I'm in the WebFOCUS Hub, and to create a visualization, I'll click the plus, create visualizations, and I'm going to use the standard retail, WF retail demo. Mine is a flat file, so it does take a little bit longer, but it helps with demonstrations in its own way to slow things down to see movement. And I'm going to pick WF Retail Lite. You can create this if you don't have it within your environment in the tutorials section on the reporting server. And it can be just flat files if you don't have access to relational, just for testing purposes if you want to go through it. So I'm going to pick WF Retail Lite, create visualization. And as you probably know, if you've used Designer, you default to chart type, stack bar. But today's presentation is strictly about reports. So you have your templates, your content picker over on the side here. The very top is a grid. That is a table file or report style, but with the by fields all displayed on every row. You can expand it here if you want to see the report section, and you can see you have standard report where the by values are only displayed when they change. And then the grid, and then this data grid, that's a chart though. So these two are your table files. They're your true report type. So I'm going to use a standard report, and I'll collapse that. I could have scrolled down and also picked up the standard report here as well. Okay. So I'm in a standard report. You'll notice the buckets change because I'm in a report style. Rows are our by fields, column groups are across, and then the bucket here will be whatever the verb is. By default, it will be summaries. It's a sum verb. You can click the little ellipse here to change the verb if you need to, or the calculation options menu here at the top. And then when you do, if you do change it, it changes the name on the bucket as well, just for reference for those at different levels of utilizing Designer for reporting purposes. So I have a brand new visualization to report. The very first thing I actually want to do, because I want to showcase some features right away, is I'm going to go to measures. I'm going to click the little ellipse here, and I'm going to add a calculation. When you do that, you have the choice of creating a calculation at the source, which is a defined field, or after aggregation, which is a computed field, right? So I'm going to keep it at the source. You can change this, but once you say OK and save it, whatever you've chosen, that's what it'll be. It'll be always a define or a compute. So if you made a mistake, then you should create another calculation, but you can always edit whether it's a define or a compute as well once you save it. But it's whatever you choose at this point. So I'm going to say I want to keep it as a define, and I want to call this adjusted net profit or something. Adjusted net profit. That's good. So let me just type something in here, and don't mind my typing. It's Friday. And okay, so if you hover over, it tells you actually what you're doing. That's the name of the field. So I'm going to just copy and paste that, make the title, and I'll take the underscores out. So that's my title. I have my format here for what I want. And for this field, I'm just going to keep it, and I want a dollar sign. If you're doing calculations, do consider with totals and things like that, whether or not you might need to increase the format. But for this, I'll leave it the way it is. And then the calculation, I'm just going to do something simple. It may be like gross profit. And then I'll do subtract. I'll put a parenthesis. And let's see, revenue. And then times 0.30. And then I'll closing bracket. Again, the calculation is not so much important as just showcasing that you can create an expression. You can use function calls to build things as well by hitting the little FX tab, and you could search for your functions. And then I can validate what I typed. I got a little green check there. Looks good. Not a guarantee 100%, but very good at least parsing for syntax issues. And then I'm going to click OK. And what I want to showcase in 937 is you'll notice right away when I created that field, it brought me right to that field in the resource, in the field listing. And notice we actually put little new icons for defines as well as computes so that they stand out. You can tell that they're a calculation. So what's great about it is UI highlights, it scrolls to that new field. So if there's folder extensions that needs, it'll bring you right there so that you don't have to hunt for it. And that's an absolute great feature, because what if you're dealing with very complex data sets that have a lot of metadata, right? And then actually in 936, one of the great features I love, customers really wanted this as well, is if you go up here to where the synonym is, right, there's a little drop-down menu. There are different options here, like you could do a folder flat view, whether or not you want to split dimensions or measures out. You can show the title, the name, or the path in the name. But here's one great one, show calculations only. So if you have a lot of metadata, a lot of fields to go through to locate, let's say you just didn't create it, maybe it's in your data source already, I can do show calculations only and check that. And it'll bring up, because WF Retail Lite actually has defines within the master. You can see it has some here, dimensions and measures. And here is my field that I just created as well. Easily available to me. I can easily locate it. And that's a big plus. Again, if you're dealing with something relatively small, it's not maybe as big of an issue. But when you're trying to locate a field that you know is out there, this makes the process much easier, but you just need to know where it is. So when you create a field, a define, it'll actually bring you right to that field starting in 937 and put the focus on it from a UI perspective. And again, at least in 936 and higher, you also have this show calculations only to kind of list out those fields for you to locate them as well. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to uncheck that because I really don't need that. I want my field list back. But again, I love those features. And again, that's customer requests. And we have quite a few of them. So they've implemented it, and I really want to showcase it because it can make your life a lot easier when developing. So, okay, I have this brand new request. I created a field. I haven't added it in yet. So let's just add some fields and build this report. I'm going to go to product, and there's 4 ways you can add fields to a request if you're not aware. I could double click and it'll choose the appropriate bucket. Might not be exactly where I want, but usually it is. I can also take a field and drag it onto the canvas, like I just did with product subcategory, and it decides it wants to be a row. I can go down to store business region here, and I can actually drag it directly to where I want it, which is column groups and across. Had I just double-clicked business region, it would have put it in rows by default, and I could have dragged it over to column groups, or again, just drag it over to the bucket that I need. You see missing there because I don't have any verbs yet. Another way, a 4th way, is I can right-click on a field, and if it's a report, it says add to report. If it's a chart, a visualization, it'll say add to chart, add to chart. but this is a report, so I'll say add to report, and because it sees its measure, it adds it to the summaries bucket. Notice dimensions are in blue within Designer, and measures are in green, alphanumerics versus numerics type. Okay, so far looks good. I have gross profit, but I want to add a few other fields. Now, something else you might not be aware of is in 936, you can multi-select fields. That was another thing that customers really wanted to have. Let's say I had store vision up here, but let's say I want revenue and adjusted net profit. Now I put the focus on that, and I could drag it over, and you can see it took both fields and add it. If you try to do something where you can't multi-select and add it in, it lets you know, adds in maybe just the first one, just to be aware of that. But obviously you can add multiple measures. It's allowing me to do so, and I was able to add that in. And then if you want to take the focus off of that, you can just select another field or something like that. And then now you can see I have a very basic information on the canvas. I have live data 1,000, not something I would normally recommend, but I'm going to change this to all, just so that I don't have to run the report all the time to showcase the changes. I'm going to apply it. Now it's going to take a little bit because it's going after anywhere from 500,000 to 2.5 million records, and it's all flat data. It's not relational. So just be aware of that, and it's updating preview with all of that data. So now you can see I have our product categories with our store business region going across, right, for the 4 regions. And then you can see gross profit, revenue, and my adjusted net profit. Okay, so what's something else that I would like to do? Probably a good thing would be column totals, right? So I just check column totals. What does that do? Well, that's updating. I'll go to the source code, outline, right-click, content, view source code. And then you'll see what it does is it adds an on-table subtotal for you coders out there that like to know what's happening in the code. That's what gets generated. Closed out the source, and you'll see it updated here, and you'll see the column totals here at the bottom. Okay, looks good to me. What else can I do? Maybe I want to show totals above rather than at the bottom of the report, at the top of the report. I could check that. I'm also going to run this at the same time that it's updating in preview to show you. But I also want you to see in the source code, what it generates is an on-table set subtotals above, right? Rather than being at the bottom of the report, it's at the top of the report. So definitely updated the source code. Oh, in preview, the totals are at the bottom. You can see that the output actually generated the totals at the top of the report. So what you might be seeing in preview is showing you at the bottom. It just has to do with this is the responsive canvas in Designer. So when you check that box, it really is doing what it's supposed to do. It's just showing you at the bottom. Had I been in the paginated canvas, so let me just, again, it's still HTML5 with the HTML as the output, as you can see from the report I just ran. But when I run it in preview using a paginated canvas, you'll see that the totals will be on top. I like to mention that it's a great Any questions in the meantime? No questions? You guys are a quiet group today. I apologize for it's still reestablishing. Okay, so now I should be able to share again.
Yeah, something happened. I couldn't hear for a while, and I didn't know if it's something I did or.
Yeah, okay. But I should be able to share.
Okay, can anybody hear me? Was going to be the next question. Okay, so you guys can hear me. Let me ping Renee. Okay, Renee, stop sharing. Can you hear us, Renee? Oh, coming in again.
Walter, can you hear me?
Now I can, yes.
Okay. There was a network problem. I apologize. I'm going to try this again. I see myself twice in the session, but let's try this. Murphy's Law, guys. It's Friday, as I like to say. Okay. All right. Are you able to see the hub again, where I was at?
Yes.
Great. I apologize again, everyone, out of my control, but hopefully we can pick up right where I left off. So what I was doing is I was showing you the show totals above. In the responsive canvas, while in preview, you'll see them below, but when you run it, it will run with them above. And then if you're in the paginated canvas, I had showcased that it actually shows it in preview as well. So I'm going to uncheck that because we really don't need it for this report, but I wanted to showcase that feature. So what if I add and make this report even just a little touch more complicated? What if I want to have another calculation added? Everything looks good so far. So I'm going to go to summaries and I'm going to add a calculation. So I click the little ellipse, add calculation. And here I'm going to call this something like margin percent. And I'm going to come back here. So that was the name. This is the title. And for this, I'm just going to do something simple like gross profit divided by revenue. Okay. I'm not going to do the percentage here because I can do it here in the format. I can actually put it here again, make sure that the format's appropriate. This is a percentage, so it's not an issue. I'm going to do the percent. It's not a little percent, but it will calculate it as a percent. Validate it. Click OK. You'll notice I get another, and notice it's like out again 370. Select update because you'll probably already figured out, if you know the language and if you've worked with it, you'll see that, yeah, my margin percent is great being calculated, but here it's adding it up, right? Because I have a column total that I checked, right? So I really need it to be recalculated. So instead of on table subtotal, if I check that, it's going to update the preview, and I'm going to go into the view source code, and you'll see it does here an on table recompute instead of subtotal. It means it's going to recalculate fields such as that compute, and now you can see my values for margin percent as I go across have been recalculated. Okay, that looks great. Again, want to add a little bit more complexity to this request. So what about row totals? If I check row total, it's going to run that. I'm going to show you in the view source code in the meantime that it's generating an on table row dash total. Walter, you able to hear me?
I can hear you, but we lost the share.
Lost screen again. I'm sorry, it's where I'm connecting to the VDI. I'm going to come back again. Okay, and I should be able to share it this time again. Okay, back in it again. So I enabled row totals. We're trying. I'm sorry, guys. It'll help you maybe remember more going back and forth like this. But you can see here at the very end, when I added that enable row totals, which did the on table row dash total, it adds up the individual columns, right? Gross profit, revenue, adjusted net profit, margin percent. But notice that margin percent kind of looks off. What it's doing is it's adding the margin percent from each of the columns because it's just summing it. That's not really what I want. I want it to be recalculated. So how can I accomplish that? A row total is just going to do that total. It's just going to do a summation. So I'm going to leave that there, but I'm going to right click on Store Business Region, my cross field, and insert breaks, and I can select aggregate rows. If I do that, in the source code, what you'll see is that I have an across on the across field, and it does a subtotal on the across. Now, right away, you can think, it's not going to be exact.
Yeah, let her know that it froze again. Okay, it looks like she went out. Hopefully she'll come back in.
Connecting.
Now we hear you, yes.
You hear me now? Okay, sorry. It's
So Renee, are you in the Zoom from your laptop or your VDI?
not a laptop, which I always am, and that's never a problem. Yeah.
Who else
Okay.
suggests maybe
Now I'm
using
going to share my.
Zesty then?
Yeah, it's the VDI. It just keeps going down. It's not my connection or anything else, but all right, we'll do our best here to get it through. I'm going to share. Okay, you should be seeing it again. Okay.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so you can see here's the row total section, and now here's my subtotal section. That's the insert on the store business region. And you can see the percentage, it's subtotaling, it's doing the same thing as the row total. So I'm going to right click on store business region, insert breaks, and I'm going to recalculate totals. Now, when it does that, in the source code, you'll see the across will be a recompute rather than a subtotal. Close that back out. And when I come back in here, and it does have to run, takes a little bit, but now you'll see it recalculated, right? So I don't need that row total anymore. I created it through the insert on the insert break on the across. So I'm going to uncheck now the row totals, and the row totals, right, will disappear. Now, one other thing while I'm updating that is I'm going to go into the store business region, insert breaks. There's actually more options here that you can control, like the title on top of the row totals, right, which said total. It says total here. I can just say something like, report row totals. Probably not something you would actually put in a report, but just for demonstration purposes. And a good thing to know is that if I change it and then I want to come back to what the default is, I could just click the little X when I hover over it and it'll bring the default back for display purposes. But I'm going to put row totals, report row totals, apply that. And what you'll see in the source code, when I go to the source code, is you'll see the across, right? And you'll see it has the report totals. Notice that also it puts the individual fields on the across. You'll see sum dot space, that's the prefix operator. Notice it has to recompute because it's calculating it. It's all important things to be aware of what it's creating behind the scenes.
Looks like there's more issues. Okay, Renee. Okay, so our message that you connected to.
Yes, I'm connecting back. I'm back
Yeah,
in.
now we hear you.
And just give me a second. I'm going to try to reestablish this again, just to try to get through it for you guys. I apologize. Okay. All right. So cool. We got our report row totals. Notice it's updated. Looks very nice. What else can we do? Well, we can actually do insert on by fields too. One thing. Yeah. Okay. Let's do it on the product category. I'm going to insert breaks and I'm going to aggregate columns. And what you're going to see is that it's going to create on the by field a subtotal. Now, of course, you know I'm going to have the same issue, right, with margin percent, that it's actually going to need to be recalculated because it's just going to sum, which is exactly what you see here, right? It's summing the values for each of the breaks. So I'm going to go back into product category, insert breaks. I'm going to go right to more options because I want to show you. I could have selected recalculate totals from that menu, but I can do it here as well. And in fact, I can also update the subtotal text, put asterisks there. And let's say if I didn't even want adjusted net profit to be displayed, I can uncheck that. I can actually even change what the calculation is for these fields. But just to showcase that, let me apply that. You can see it from a source code perspective, what it does, right? It has to recompute the individual fields. It doesn't include the adjusted net profit. And you can see my ads with the asterisks for that. And then when I come back in, you can see the update and notice that it doesn't have adjusted net profit. It recalculated my margin percent. Looks really good. One of the other things is a great feature is video production only has one row. I don't want that total line to repeat. So I can come back into here to a product category, insert breaks, go to more options.
Yeah, still having technical difficulties. So Rudolph, why don't we use the default, the correct total calculation? Because we don't know, sometimes you may want the sum, the aggregation, sometimes you may want to recompute. So this gives you the control over it. I'm thinking maybe if you put in a new feature to be able to set the defaults to be either one, that might be something that could be helpful. I'll try to fill in while we wait for her to reconnect. one thing I learned is how to get to see the view source, which I've started using Designer a little more. And I'm also running 937. And I went to do that and I couldn't figure it out, but I saw she just right-clicked and was able to view source from that way, or view the code. Okay, it looks like she left completely. Okay, while we wait, I'm going to sign in and see what I can see here. Hopefully I don't have similar issues. Reporting. Just checking to see if I have the BF retail. I do. I don't know what table she was using directly. Just paying. All right, so while we're waiting, I'm just going to share with you something that I figured out. So I'm going into the Create Visualization in Designer, and I have a file here called MySQL Site Codes. But then I also have a MySQL Site Features. And the features tells me like what features a customer has. And this is like really old data back when we were originally IBI. So what I wanted to do is be able to join them, but I wasn't quite sure how to do that using Designer. So I was able to then pick the first table and then do prepare extract data. and then find my second table, site features, and drag it in. And then this shows what the results will be based on the current configuration using an inner join. And then if I want to make it a left outer, I can click here and notice I'm joining FOCLIST to FOCLIST, which also isn't correct. I want to join site code to site code. And I was able to force this. Got to do it again. And pick site code and site code. And it does a lot of pre-processing. It does a join between the two, and it shows you what the results would be. In this case, I'm still doing an inner join. So it's telling me that I'm going to have excluded so many records from each of the different sides of the join. So if I just make it a left outer, then I should have everybody plus the additional data from the cross-reference. Okay, now nothing is missing. Click OK. And now I'm going to go into, once this finishes, visualization. Click OK. Now I can go into visualization. And then this takes me into the designer part where you can go ahead and build your report. So I can take site code. I want to do a report. I want to do detail. And then I can come in here and get the feature codes. Lost site code. There we go. All right, I still need to figure out how to see the view source. Outline. Okay, so where is that? See, now you guys are teaching me.
Okay, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Hello. Yes, we can hear
Hi.
you.
So Walter, I don't need much time. Oh, you're showcasing things for them in the meantime? Aw.
Yeah. I've been playing with designers. So I was showing them how to join two files.
Woo, cool. So you guys got extra because of it. I apologize. I had to reboot again. Murphy's Law. I said it earlier to Walter, and I definitely put the kibosh on it for today, as they say. But okay, let me share my screen. Right where I left off. So I'm back into insert breaks. I went to more options, got recalculate totals. At the current level, I recommend doing that with designer. Don't do current and higher because you want to have control at each of the individual levels. I'm going to put adjusted net profit back on. Remember, it wasn't showing up here because I unchecked it. I certainly could change the options if I want to be something other than that calculation, something different. And then I wanted to check the show subtotals only when the group has more than one row. That's the multi-lines option. So I'm going to apply that. let that go. And then in the source code, showcase that for the by product category, you can see the recompute. You can see the sum on the individual fields, including the adjusted net profit that I put back in. There's my as, right? And there's multi-lines. And now let's close that out. And we'll see in preview that when I go down to video production, I only see the one line. Great. Okay, so now let's add a few more things. And the great thing about with 937 is we kind of closed the gap when it comes to, you always had page headings and footings, right? Here's the section you can kind of control that. But now, not only do you have page heading and footings that were there, but you have report headings and footings. Again, generated once at the top of the report for the heading and the report footing at the bottom. Pages for each page. And then in 936, we actually added it for the individual sort field. You right-click, and there's subhead and subfoots that do the on sort field subhead and subfoot. So, okay, let me come back here. I enabled that. So if you don't see something there, and then you come back and you check it, and then you can see, you'll see right-click here. So if you're used to double-clicking in some of the older releases, you need to right-click. So I'm going to right-click in the report header, and I'm going to say Edit Heading. And I'm going to type in something like, I don't know, anything. It could be like, confidential data, something like, so let's just say something like confidential retail analysis or something like that. And again, and then maybe say on another line, executive summary. And then I'm going to highlight this, maybe make it 20. I'll keep it bold, I'll center it, and I'll change the color. You get the idea. And I'll apply that. And there's limited space on the resource, on the responsive canvas. So it's going to update because it's all the records, but you get the idea of what's available to you. And I'm going to kind of try to do this in order to make it a little make sense, So then on the bottom, so for the report footing, you'll see I'll right click down here, edit the footing, and here I'll do something like, maybe internal only. And then I'll say, put runtime. And then I can actually go to variables over here, and I could take today's date. We'll do amper date. And then amper TOD, pull that in. And then let's say I want to make that, center it. Let's change the color. Maybe for the top row, I want to make that a 20 and bold. But maybe for the bottom, I just want to make that a 14. Justification, I think it takes all the lines at this time. It's something I think for future enhancement. And then I'm going to apply that. So that takes care of my report headings and report footings. What about my page heading and page footing? So for the page heading, I kind of want to put a product category there because I'm going to hide the product category column for this report, but I'll still keep it as a sort. So for the page heading here, I'll edit that. And for the page heading, I'm just going to drag in product category. So I'll get rid of that, go to my fields list, go for locate product category, drag that in. And then, for this, maybe I'll make this, I don't know, 14. I'll take a 14. Let's say I'll leave it as a bold. I'll center that. And I'll change the color. Okay. So that's my now page heading. And maybe for the page footing, I'm going to want to put the page number. I'm trying to just do things to showcase the different options that you have available to you. If I were to do page numbers right now, I don't have any kind of thing that's generating page numbers for this report, but certainly I could right-click on product category and under insert breaks as page. I can do continuous numbering. I could restart at 1 when that sort field changes. I'm going to do continuous numbering. And then after I do that, now I can update the page footer. And I'll do like page with tab page no. Remember, tab page no is our page number. Variable, system variable, so I can include that in here. So I'm going to right click edit that, and I'm just going to say, page, colon, caret, tab, page now. And maybe I'll make this, 12 bold, and I'll make it the same consistent color and apply that. So now we have our report headings and footings. We have our page headings and footings. And now on product category, you can see that. And by the way, for the variables and everything, you won't see them substitute. Like if I would scroll down for internal only as well. But here, product category, if you go here, you'll see subheader and subfoot. So that does on product category subhead. So if I add a subhead to that, I can say, maybe review performance for, and I'll put product category in there. I know I'm putting product category in a lot, but I just want to show you, hey, you can do field references. And maybe I'm going to make this a 10, a little bit smaller, and italics. And I'll keep the justification, but I'll change the color to be consistent. And I'll apply that. And then I'm also going to do a footer because I kind of wanted to show you something a little cool maybe you're not aware of. Maybe you are aware of it. But for the footer, I can reference other fields. ST dot for the subtotal prefix. And you actually see, I thought it would showcase that. So I'm going to right click on product category again. And I'm going to go to subfooter this time, add subfooter. It was already there. Let's say edit. And here I'm going to say something like, let's say something like rolling quantity. And then I'm going to, I'll drag in the quantity field. And then I'll say cost of goods subtotal. And I'll drag in cost of goods. And then for the cost of goods, I'll put a st dot prefix on it, as you can see there. And for the rolling quantity, I'll put a ct dot on it. And for this, I'll also put it as a 10 and italics, and I'll change the color again. You kind of can see that. And I'll apply that. And the only other thing I really kind of want to do is I want to actually hide product category because I really don't need a column. With all the information that I'm displaying in this report, I don't really need that. It's still being sorted. That's still my high order sort field. I still have all my breaks on it, of course. So I'm going to right click and hide it. And another thing I wanted to do is I can rename fields like, adjusted net profit and margin percent of taking some space and the width of the report with a cross. So maybe I want to rename those, and I can use commas to say, hey, go on multiple lines. You can go up to 5 lines, but you can do that right in the tool. So I'm updating adjusted net profit now. So that's on 3 lines for the column title. And then I can do the same thing for margin percent. And so I'll rename margin percent, and I'll put that comma there as well. And I'm actually going to, I think at this point, run this. But through the source code, I just kind of wanted you to see what happened behind the scenes, right? So my on-table subhead, that's my report heading. Then there's my on-table subfoot, my report footing. There's my page heading with the product category reference. Right? There's my page footing with tab page no. And then I can see on my by fields, my on statement, there's the subhead, that's the subheader in the tool. And there's my subfoot. Close that out. And then look at the report output, and you can kind of see the impact, right, of all that I did. There's my report heading, my report footing. There's my page heading. There's my page footing. And then there's my subhead and subfoot. And maybe I want to realign. We don't have the alignment grid yet in Designer, but we certainly could use, like I could do type equals subfoot, head align equal body. So if I wanted to, I can actually come in here, go to format, and pick up a different style sheet that has just type subfoot, header, body. Very basic, straightforward. I'm not doing anything fancy there. That's the only thing that's different in that Designer 2018 theme. And then let me run that. And that'll showcase how that header line is impacting the display a little bit, make it a little bit nicer for you. I just have a little bit left. Walter, can I go another 10 minutes? I know you're going to run over what you have to talk about. Is that all right?
Can you do 5?
I'll try to do 5. Okay. I'll try.
Okay.
I'm sorry. So you can see how it gave a nice little spacing here for you. What else do I want to showcase? I'm going to come back to the field, adjusted net profit. You have the ability actually in 935 to do data bars. So I kind of wanted to talk about this important topic because if you do data bars and you have a cross, there is an interesting thing that you should be aware of. So in the responsive canvas, you will see it. It will be horizontal. And if you want to change the colors, by the way, go to Format, Columns. Make sure you pick value. You have to say value, not title and value. And then pick the column that you have the data visualization on it. You added the bars. That's adjusted net profit. And you'll get a data bars section here. And I could say the positive is, let's say green, and the negative is red. Right? And then you can see that update. But when I run this, we'll see the difference. And then you'll see in preview. But I wanted to also showcase the source code. I can't help it. You'll see that in the source code, this is what that generates. That's the source code in the style sheet that you'll see. It's generated from all of that UI, adding the data bars and the colors. Okay, so now in preview, you'll see it and it looks horizontal, but in actual runtime, it is vertical. And the reason for that is it's a cross is being used, and that's the nature of it. But because the responsive canvas, the way it's generating, it will show it as horizontal. Now, what you could do as if you need it for HTML report only, what I could do is I'm going to close this out. I'm going to save this procedure. And I'm going to say just a retail executive report. Long time, but let's just save it. And I saved it. And now if I do properties on here, and I'll copy the path to it, I can actually keep that in Designer, go to TextPad, the text editor, I should say, and let me do a dash run with a dash include, paste in the path to that, and then I can set viz bar orient equal to H. Again, this is only for HTML. Now let's run that. Expand it. Just so that for HTML, you could potentially keep everything in Designer, but if you do need those bars to be horizontal, this is how you could accomplish it. You could also have it as a global setting if it's not going to impact anything else, if that's what you want. But now you can see how you got the red and green bars and it's vertical. It's horizontal rather than the default vertical because of the across.
Nope, I think we lost her again. Okay. Let's see if she comes right back.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now.
Okay.
Went away again. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the mainframe part of the session. So if you're not sticking around, What I'd like you to do is to, when you leave, you'll get a link to fill out an evaluation. Please fill it out. Again, sorry about the technical difficulties. If you work on a mainframe and you have a question or and want to continue, hopefully, stick around. Let's see. Trying to do too many things
Can
at
you hear
once
me?
here. Yeah, now we can hear you, yes.
Any questions? I mean, I did get through most of it. One of the other things I would just say for anybody that hung around is there's a conditional styling option that would have been cool, but auto fit for HTML is there. So if you go to output settings in your HTML, there's a little checkbox for auto fit in 937. That was the last piece I was going to show anyway. So I apologize. Any questions or anything?
No, I don't see any.
Okay. Be kind in the evaluations. Hopefully just evaluate the features. And I, again, apologize. It's never happened before, but things strike. So Walter, I'll send it over to you now. Sorry.
Right. No problem. All right. So again, we're going to start the mainframe portion of the show. And if you're not reading on a mainframe, feel free to drop. And again, please fill out the evaluation. And don't forget to sign up for Summit. We're looking forward to seeing everyone there. And Shay fought to get a 2-day session. So hopefully the extra day makes it worthwhile for the trip to New York. All right, we'll give people a chance to drop. Order here. Okay, so the session I'm going to talk about for the mainframe side is FOCLOG. Now, I've spoken about FOCLOG previously, and I've talked about the reporting, how to send us your data, what you need to run, and we talked about the different menu options if you run the interactive FOCLOG reporting. Today, what I'm going to talk about is if you're running on an older version, and by older version, I mean prior to 7.6. So if you're running on 708R, 709, 711, any of the 7.2s or any of the 7.3s, FOCLOG is not part of the product when you first install it. So if you do want to use it, it has to be added into the product. And that's what I'm going to talk about today, how to implement FOCLOG in the older versions that don't automatically have it. So if you're running 7.6 or higher, you don't need to stick around unless you have nothing better to do. I'd be happy to have you listen in. If you do decide to drop, though, we're trying to get, I mentioned earlier that at Summit, I'm doing a mainframe session. And the mainframe session is going to have topics on how to help you leverage the power of your Z system. So whether you're running Focus, WebFOCUS, Focus Studio, or if you have data on the mainframe and you're accessing it using other BI tools like Power BI, I should have something in there that will affect all of you. So if you're interested, please sign up and attend the mainframe session. I would appreciate it. All right, so let's just jump into FOCLOG. Okay. Jumped ahead here. Okay, so we're going to talk about the files that are needed and where you get the files from, and then what you need to do with them, which goes into the discuss transfer methods. And then we're going to talk about what you need to do on your mainframe once you get the files. All right, so FOCLOG needs to be added to version 708R through 7.3.13. So if you received a new Focus license, you should have gotten a zip file, and that zip file would have contained all the information you needed to implement the new license and to include FOCLOG if we indicate that you haven't received it yet. So the first time you get the new license and you didn't receive FOCLOG information, we're going to include that as part of the zip file that you get when you request a new key. So this screen is how we generate keys. We have a company name, site code, the version, and the expiration date. So version is important because depending on the version, you'll get different set of files. So when you open a case, it's very helpful if you provide the question mark CPU ID and question mark rel immediately when you open the case, because then we know specifically what version you're running and what your current license looks like. If you already have a new key and you did get the files to incorporate FOCLOG, but you don't have them anymore, we can create a new set of keys for you that does have it. The key processing and the FOCLOG anchoring are two independent processes. Let's see. So once the keys are generated, so this is somebody who received a full set, so they have the new IBIC PUID module for the new license code. They may or may not have an F license. F license is only available for versions 7.6.10. This particular set of files that I created were for 708R, which is the oldest version that we currently support. So notice in here we have FL Xmit, FL Object, FL Load Xmit, FL Object, FOCExec, FOCLOG. All of the Xmit files are standard IBM transmit formats. So they're standard because you can transfer them as binary and they're 80 characters long. So when you transfer them, you want to make sure you put them into a file on your mainframe that is DSORG PS. It's a sequential file with a fixed block record length and an 80 LRECL. So again, those are the Xmit files. Once you get them on the mainframe, you're then going to receive them. The PDFs, that just tells you how to take the files. I will be creating a separate install sheet, which then has the steps of, extract the files from the zip, transfer them to your mainframe, and have all of the steps specifically outlined. The FOCLOG.xmit is that will contain the IBIC PUID module, which is the new license, which you would then replace. But again, if you already installed a new license and you're just getting the new files in order to anchor in the FOCLOG product, then you don't need to process that one. All right, transferring the files to the, so you open a ticket, you ask for a new license, or you ask for the FOCLOG files that you need for the older version. We will send you a zip file. So then you need to take that zip file, extract the files out, and then transfer the Xmit files to your mainframe. So the preferred method is using a binary FTP. So whether you're using FileZilla or just a standard FTP client that comes with Windows, either one will work. Just make sure before you transfer them, do the put commands, you specify that you're doing this in binary. The alternative way is you can use the IND dollar file transfer, which is part of the IBM's personal communication software. I don't use that because I think it's a little more complicated. You have to explicitly make sure you're doing binary. I believe you can specify the LRECL of the file that you're transferring it to, where FTP, or even FTP, I think does not a standard 80 characters by default. So what I do is I pre-allocate the files on the mainframe as 80 characters, and then I transfer into them and use the replace option. All right, so once transferred, here are the files. So these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Xmit files. And then we have to then receive each of the Xmit files. Okay, so to receive the Xmit file, you can go into option 6 in TSO, which is the command line, and do a receive in data set, and then you have your input data set that you just received from your PC, or that you transferred, I shouldn't say received. Notice I don't have my ID in front of here. So if I don't put the dataset name in tick marks, the system will default by prepending with my user ID. Once I put receive in dataset, open paren, file name, close paren, enter, then it'll say enter the restore parameters, and then we're going to say dataset, and then this will be the final exploded or uncompressed or whatever terminology you want to use on dataset. So here's option 6. We do a receive. Notice at the bottom it says enter restore parameters or delete or end. And I say data set, and I'm going from FOCLOG, I meaning input, and then I'm going to R, which is the received version. So it says restore successful to data set, and there's the data set name. So of the 6 files, your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Of the 5, we got FL load goes to FOCLOG load lib. FL object goes to FOCLOG object. And these are just suggested mapping names. You can call it whatever you want. Just make sure you keep track of the names that you're using, because in the last one, in the JCL, there's a job that you're going to have to run, which then brings everything together. All right, so in the JCL data set, once you receive it, there's a member called JCL site, and there's 4 parameters that you have to put information in. So FOCLOG is it's the old FOCLOG, and this is the FOCLOG.load. So this is your current production data set name of what you're currently running Focus under. The end FOCLOG is going to be a new data set that gets created during this process, which only has the updated modules that you then need to copy into your production library. So when you run this, you're not touching your production. You're not updating. I'm sorry, you are touching it, but you're not updating it. You're not updating your production environment at all. You're just creating the modules that you can then copy into your production environment. So here I entered my 4 data sets. So again, I did this for 708R. So my original or my production FOCLIB is myid.f708r.foclib.load, and I'm going to a new one, which is going to be n708 foclib.load. And the FL load is the load lib that you just received, and the object is the object you just received. So that's why I'm saying you can name it whatever you want, but just make sure you keep track, because you're going to need to use it in this JCL. That's the only thing you need to change in here. You put a job card and put the set values in. You're done. Then you can submit the job. Okay, what happened there? I thought I showed the output of when I submitted the job, but I guess I didn't. As long as you have condition codes 4 or less, you're good. So 4s are just warnings, so you don't have any problems with that. So once you're done, then you need to copy the R FOCLOG foclib.load into your foclib.load, into your production environment. So what, copy updated modules to production. So this is going to only have the IBI CPU ID. The N708 is the one that you created when you submitted the JCL, and that will have several members in it. And then you're also going to put that in your production environment. And then lastly, the folk exec and masters are so you have the current modules in order to run the online FOCLOG menu reporting and the 4x9 JCL. Once that's done, FOCLOG is still not turned on, but now it is part of your focus environment that you can turn on. And then I'm going to refer you to other sessions of how to do it. But basically, you have to add a focus log member to your errors.data for the old versions, and that's about it. You just need to make sure that the data set name that you're collecting the FOCLOG data in is writable by anyone who happens to use it. All right. So overview, you extract the files from the zip. We do a binary FTP to the mainframe. We receive the files. We edit and submit to JCL. And then we copy the necessary files back into your production data set. That puts it into your current version. And then you can go ahead and activate it and start collecting by creating the FOCLOG collection data set and adding the member focus log. All right, again, Summit, make sure you register, make sure you sign up for the mainframe session. Is there any questions? I mean, I'm ready here to show you the files. So here's my estimate files, which you'll see you really can't browse them. And these are all LRECL 80. When I receive them, now you can actually see what's in here. So folkexec.data basically just has some folkexecs in it for the FOCLOG reporting. The object has some object code, which again you can't read, but it's needed in order to anchor it into FOCLOG into the product. Look at the JCL. So this is what we send, and then you just have to fill in the values. Okay. Any questions? All right. Oh, we're right at 101, so not too bad. All right, so thanks for coming. Remember to fill out your evaluations, and hope we'll see you next month, and hopefully we'll see you in person in August. And again, sorry for the technical difficulties. Sometimes they happen.
I apologize. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Appreciate everyone's patience with me. So thank you.
Have a great. Give me a chance to practice my joining.
Exactly. I got to see it from another perspective. So that's actually kind of cool in its own way. Thank you, Walter. Really appreciate you stepping up. Thank you.
Oh, no problem.
So I tripped into network diagnostics. Thanks. Yeah. Absolutely.
So what I've started doing is the morning of Focus Friday, I have 2 routers and a modem, and I unplug them for a minute and then plug them all back in, hoping that
I did that.
Everything will work just fine.
I actually do that. I had no problems up into the meeting and even the beginning part of it. It was just, I thought it was the VDI. Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, it's hard. It's harder if it's a VDI issue.
Yeah. But it looked like it was also then in the end, my network, my connection. Maybe they were doing some work in the area. They don't let us know, unfortunately.
So last month, they sent a message that they were doing work on Thursday before Focus Friday.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think, yeah. They don't tell us here. It was like they do whatever they do, and then lucky us. So.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone, for coming.
Have a great day.